Hello, I'm Isaac Keith Martinez, and welcome to Isaac's Haunted Beard. This video was posted in November of 2018. In fact, it was posted in the very beginning of November 2018. What does that mean? We just finished October. And what does that mean for film nerds like me? We just finished hashtag 31 horror films 31 days. The project where you have to watch 31 horror films within 31 days, which I did. But actually I did a little bit more than 31 horror films in 31 days. I actually did 60 horror films within 31 days. And I have a calendar here that shows me what movies I watched. Some of them were double features, some of them were triple features, and sometimes they were just one film. So I'm going to go through them with you. If you're interested, spend some time, listen to me tell you what movies I watched and why I watched them. Here we go. Day 1. Phantasm and Scream. I started the month with 2 franchises that feature a collection of characters that are introduced in part 1 and stick around for most of the rest of the films. Day 2. Phantasm 2 and Scream 2. Day 3. Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead, and Scream 3. Day 4. Phantasm 4, Lord of Oblivion, and Scream 4. And this is where the Scream franchise ends, kids. Day 5, Phantasm Ravager, and my second film was called Spellcaster, which is a pretty cool horror film from the 80s starring Adam Ant, or at least Adam Ant's in it. Day 6, Alone in the Dark, and He Knows You're Alone. So it's pretty clear that I chose those 2 films because they both have the word alone in the title. Fun fact, Tom Hanks' film debut was in He Knows You're Alone. I love that. I love that famous movie stars often start their career in horror films. Day 7. Just one movie tonight, kids, and that's Final Exam. This is a horror film where most of the horror doesn't start until about an hour into the movie, which at first feels like a bad decision, but then the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, I just spent an hour with these people, now when they finally get killed, I'll actually feel ways about it. So, Final Exam, which features a really great character named Radish. It's worth checking out just for Radish. Day 8. Trilogy of Terror. That's all I watched that night, was a TV movie from the 70s starring Karen Black in 3 different segments. This is the movie that's famous for the Zuni Fetish doll. And going into this movie, I had heard about this segment so much that I felt like I already knew what to expect. So although I already enjoyed it, I actually personally enjoyed the first story even more because I didn't know what to expect and I didn't see the twist ending coming. Day number 9, The Exorcist 3 and Get Out. Why are these 2 films placed together? Jordan Peele, the director of Get Out, has gone on record to say that Get Out is a possession film. So, there you go. Day 10, comical horror pairing, Dead Dudes in the House and Redneck Zombies. Redneck Zombies, entirely shot in VHS. And don't use that against it. It's actually a really funny movie and it's edited like a film. It's taken seriously. And good special effects too. Day number 11, Prison and A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. These are 2 films directed by Rennie Harlan. In fact, they're released a year apart. In Nightmare on Elm Street 4, there's a scene where they go to a theater and you can see one of the posters in the lobby is of Prison. Day 12, The Being and the Beast Within. Kind of a creature feature. Day 13, Psycho 2. I actually really like Psycho 2. Day 14 is a triple feature, and that's the first one was called V. It's pronounced V, but it's spelled V-I-Y. It's a horror film from the 60s from Russia. Alucarda, which is a horror film from Mexico from the 70s. And Lemora, A Child's Tale of the Supernatural. It's a horror film from America from the 70s. It's a dark fairy tale. All good stuff. Day 15, the double feature was Candyman and Pet Cemetery. So these are 2 films that are adapted by literary works by famous horror authors Clive Barker and Stephen King. The next night are the sequels. On day 16 it was Candyman Farewell to the Flesh, and Pet Cemetery 2, which I really dig. Pet Cemetery 2 is a bonkers film, and if you don't... what I like about it is that it's its own movie. It doesn't have the responsibility of having to adapt a book. So it's allowed to be its own movie, and it's really, really crazy. And it takes place on Halloween. Okay, so on the 17th, The next day, I had already reached my 31st film of the month. So for my number 31 movie, I watched Rob Zombie's 31. And then I paired that with The Funhouse, because I feel like 31 kind of already feels like its own violent Funhouse, and The Funhouse is directed by Tobe Hooper, and I feel like Rob Zombie is really influenced by Tobe Hooper, so the two movies together made sense to me. The next night I had a triple feature: Halloween, Halloween, and Halloween. So I started off with a 1978 John Carpenter film, then I went to the theater and watched the new film, and I came home and watched the 2009 remake by Rob Zombie. The next night I watched Night of the Demons, the 2009 version, and Tales from the Crypt Presents Demon Knight, because both films have the word demon and knight in the title. And I watched the 2009 version because I'd seen the old one so many times that I wanted to give the new one a chance. And I do think that every time I see it, it grows on me. So I think I could officially say that I really dig the remake of Night of the Demons from 2009. And I think that if you have it in you to enjoy it, the best way to do it is to not compare it to the original and just let it be its own film. The next night I watched Cursed and Tales from the Crypt Presents Bordello of Blood, mostly because I watched Demon Knight the day before and I wanted to watch the two Tales from the Crypt movies a day apart. The next night I watched a TV movie called The Midnight Hour, and I paired it with John Carpenter's The Fog. Midnight Hour is a pretty cool 80s TV movie. There's a great scene where a female vampire leaps towards her victim, another woman that she's going to attack, and they show it in slow motion while the Smiths, I think How Soon Is Now, is playing in the background. Very artistic, cinematic moment for a TV movie. You can see that on YouTube, by the way. The next night I watched, which is day 22, One Dark Night and The Mutilator, two horror films from the 80s. On the 23rd, I watched 3 films, all of them with a witch theme: Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and The Lords of Salem. And Halloween 3 I chose to watch on the 23rd because that movie starts on the 23rd, so it seemed very appropriate. The next day I watched a double feature of Terrifier and Murder Loves Killers 2. Terrifier is on Netflix, and I highly recommend to watch it if you haven't seen it already. It's a newer film, and it's really great. It's pretty scary. I have a friend who told me that she had a nightmare based on that movie the same day that she saw it, so that's no joke, folks. And then Murder Loves Killers 2 is a movie from about 10 years ago, direct-to-video horror film that I feel is yet to really find its audience, but it's a cool slasher film. The next night I watched Trick or Treats, not to be confused with Trick or Treat from 1996 or Trick or Treat from, I think, 2009, and I paired that with Deadly Friend, which is a cool Wes Craven film from the 80s that has its audience, but I feel like that audience will grow once it finally finds its way to Blu-ray. The next day I just watched one movie, and that was The Cabin in the Woods, which is a movie that I think is safe to already call a horror masterpiece. And speaking of cabins in the woods, the most famous, or at least my favorite cabin in the woods of all time in the world of horror films, is from Sam Raimi. And that next night, on the 27th day of October, I watched The Evil Dead, which also introduced the world of Bruce Campbell. The next day I watched a comical horror double feature in Murder Party and Dead Alive. And Murder Party is like a horror film for most of the film, but then the last act, it really kicks in as a horror film, but it still kind of maintains its sense of humor. And Dead Alive is Peter Jackson's second film. Or is it his third? Anyway, it's a horror film, and it's very gory. It's very funny, and it's wacky as heck. The next day I watched The Black Coat's Daughter and The Last Exorcism, which is another possession double feature. I think The Last Exorcism is really good. I wish it had a larger audience, and I feel like one of the things that makes it not achieve that is its lousy sequel. If you've never seen The Last Exorcism and you trust me, check it out and avoid seeing part 2, because it actually takes away from how special part 1 is. The next night I watched Dark Night of the Scarecrow and Let's Scare Jessica to Death. These are both from the 70s, but Dark Night of the Scarecrow is a TV movie. And it's really good. It's very, very creepy. The final night, October 31st, Halloween. I actually watched a triple feature, but the first 2 films were the final 2 films in my hashtag 31 horror films 31 days, and then the final film was separate from that. So the 59th film that I watched was WNUF Halloween Special, which is a comedy horror film, and it is done in the style of a lost VHS tape, but of a TV broadcast. And it is a good spin on the whole found footage genre. And then the final film that I watched was the 1986 film Trick or Treat, starring Mark Price and the late Tony Fields as Rock's chosen warrior, Sammy Kerr. And when Trick or Treat finished, it was midnight, so it was officially November 1st, but it was still Halloween to me because I'd not gone to bed yet, and I knew I was going to stay up for a few more hours, so I finished my evening by watching The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, starring Don Knotts. And there you go, folks. I watched 60 horror films in 31 days, not to mention keeping up with The Walking Dead and American Horror Story Apocalypse, and other shows that I watched like The Simpsons and Bob's Burgers, which, you know, they did their Halloween specials, and even wrestling. I'm a big WWE fan. They had 2 pay-per-views last month, Super Showdown and Evolution. And I even watched, I managed to do another project called 31 Twilight Zones in 31 days, where I watched a different episode of The Twilight Zone every day for the month. So it was pretty crowded as far as absorbing horror content and cool stuff is concerned. And I shared it on Twitter, and now I'm sharing it with you here on YouTube. Speaking of Twitter, if you don't follow me there, please do, at Isaac's Haunted Bee. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Isaac's Haunted Beard here on YouTube. Alright, there you go, folks. It was fun spending time with you. Till next time.